and you can anticipate things, and you can play better, and you can play faster. And I think sometimes when things get a little bit difficult, we lose our focus a little bit. And one of the interesting things somebody brought to my attention, the two longest games that we had last year, almost 4 hours long, 2 games, Tennessee and LSU. We made mistakes at the end of the game which were very costly. And so the ability to sustain this level of concentration and focus, no matter what you call it, deeper focus, whatever, is something that we really, really need to do and continue to work on, so that we have a chance to be, more consistent as a team and don't make plays that are drive killers or give up explosive plays on defense or help the other team with penalties or whatever it is. I like the attitude that the team has. I like the togetherness. I like the sort of sense of commitment to the principles and values that everybody seems to be buying into. But that's something that we need to work on, and every guy has got to do a good job of, working on that.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Kyle Henderson of Bama Football on YouTube. Hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe. Also got the Venmo QR code at the bottom of this screen. I appreciate the tips for putting this podcast together. That was Nick Saban on Wednesday, August 9th, talking about attention to detail. I thought that was a very interesting stat as well. You look at the 2 games that Alabama lost last season. Each of those games were the longest games that they played in during the season. They lost those games by a total of 4 points. That's it. Right. And now you look to everybody saying that Alabama doesn't have it anymore. Nick Saban's lost his fastball. Alabama isn't what they were. I was really surprised that the coaches poll had them at number 3, to be honest. I mean, you look at the teams, you had Georgia, you had Michigan, and then people slotted Alabama at number 3. I would have thought, considering that LSU beat them, and so did Tennessee, you might have them a little bit further down in the rankings. So, still, I think that shows the respect that people have for Coach Saban, especially the coaches around college football. How this podcast is going to work, we're going to pipe in some Nick Saban, then we're going to pipe in some comments from Jermaine Burton, from Chris Braswell, and from TERRION Arnold. We talked to those players on Thursday, August 10th. If you like this podcast, hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe, and away we go with a continuation of Nick Saban's press conference starting now.
Today was the first day in pads. Obviously, we've gotten chased inside by the rain a couple days. So this was one of the first days, second day, I guess, we were able to stay outside for the entire practice. And, it's a great opportunity for us to be able to stay focused in these kind of conditions, especially toward the end of practice when guys, are getting tired. And Saturday scrimmage will be no different. We want to evaluate whether guys can block, tackle, execute what they're supposed to do, not so much try to game plan and experiment with things, but just see how guys can play winning football at whatever position. That's something that I think is really, really important. We've had 2 really good speakers the last 2 nights. Shep, last night Pete Rose. Amazing to me all the accomplishments that Pete Rose was able to, like all the records. I mean, I'm going to tell you, maybe you guys can look them up, but it's fascinating. And he was, in his own admission, he was not the most talented guy, but Charlie Hustle, man. I mean, that guy was something else when it came to competitive spirit and how he went about doing what he did to, play at a high level for so long. I think it was good for our players to hear. They really enjoyed it. He had a great sense of humor. So, and Shep was all about being a man. So I think some good things happening from that standpoint and helping our guys develop the right habits.
As you just heard from Coach Saban, he's looking for guys that play winning football. No, not so much to figure out the depth chart. I'm sure we're going to hear about big plays that take place at Bryant-Denny Stadium this coming Saturday between the quarterbacks, the wide receivers, whoever it is. But I think what Coach Saban really wants to see is where this team is from an actual game standpoint early on in this fall camp period. He also mentioned the fact that Pete Rose came to talk to the team, and a lot of people had difference of opinions on social media about Coach Saban flying Pete Rose in to talk to the Alabama Crimson Tide football team. That was on, I guess, probably Tuesday night, I would assume, or sometime this week. Pete Rose, now 82 years old, looked up the stats. Batting average all-time, 303. He had 4,200 hits, Home runs 160, runs batted in 1,300, winning percentage of 525. As a player, he played for the Reds, as you know, from 1963 to 1978. A lot of people had difference of opinions. Look, Coach Saban has an ideology of bringing people to come into the program to talk to the guys about what they did as a professional athlete. Remember a couple years ago, he had Kobe come in, which is still, you can look that interview up. I still do. It was a really amazing talk, GOAT versus GOAT, right? And sometimes, he has these guys come in who are accomplished. For example, Pete Rose, very accomplished in what he did from the baseball aspect, but clearly we know he made some off the field decisions that people still talk about to this day. So I'm sure that was an added element, which does resonate to a lot of the players, right? I mean, you have to talk about these real life situations that continue to hit home and things to avoid. So Nick Saban always has a plan. He's not going to bring in somebody to his program, to his brand, to, detour any of these athletes from making a bad decision. That the kids are in good hands with him. And, it was interesting to hear Coach Saban talk about Charlie Hustle. We continue with the Bama Football Podcast here on YouTube.
Yeah, Coach, just what kind of progress have you seen from Terrance Ferguson at guard?
Terrance Ferguson is playing really, really well. He's gotten bigger and stronger. He's also always been very explosive and had explosive power and body quickness. And he's very confident in what he's doing. And, we're playing him at center some too, which he's done a good job of that. He's showing a lot of maturity. And I look at him as a starter on our team. I think we have 6 or 7 guys who may be starters. So we'll see what the best combination is as we go through camp.
I think that's a very good update on Terrance Ferguson. You look at Terrance Ferguson. This is his second year, 6'4", 318 pounds, out of Fort Valley, Georgia. He's a redshirt sophomore, actually. And last season, he played in 53 total snaps against Utah State, came off the bench and earned a couple snaps. Played against Austin Peay, 10 snaps, and against Kansas State, played in the Sugar Bowl. But it's really good to see Nick Saban say that he's a starter. He looks as a starter, and he's playing some center too. I thought that was an interesting nugget, right? So behind Seth McLaughlin, run the damn ball, Seth McLaughlin. You have probably Darian Dalcourt, who also saw some time at center, and then also TJ Ferguson, a.k.a. Ferg, as he's known by the players. But working at that left guard position, either way you spin it, he's a starter. And you don't hear Coach Saban say that too often about some of his players. But to get that notoriety and to get that label early on in the season, I think speaks volumes about Terrance Ferguson's work during this early fall camp, along with the summer and the spring. So kudos to Terrance Ferguson for landing that title.
As far as freshmen who in the past have been able to contribute early on, what are some common threads or attributes that you've seen that they've done to be able to contribute early?
I think it's maturity. I think they're mature, they're confident. It's interesting, how people gain their self-esteem. Some people gain their self-esteem from what everybody else thinks. And, I think that's pretty shallow and can be sometimes misleading. But these guys are mature in terms of believing in themselves, having confidence, believing that they can learn, believing that they can go out there and play the techniques that they need to play to be able to have success. And they've had success in the past based on their performance and what they've done, not based on what somebody else said about them. So, and I think that maturity is, the biggest difference in guys that can develop more quickly and in guys that may take a little longer to develop.
We have 2 freshmen right here at the University of Alabama that should see a significant amount of playing time. You have Caleb Downs on the defensive side. Terran Arnold was asked about Caleb Downs, and we'll play that soundbite here in a little bit. He said that, look, he's a straight playmaker, and Nick Saban just said he's looking for maturity within those freshmen that can play. And absolutely freshmen play here at the University of Alabama. And then on the offensive side of the ball, you have Justice Haynes, who is probably the 3rd running back right now in that rotation. But I think behind Jason McClellan and Roydell Williams, he's certainly going to get PT. I would say on the defensive side, it's going to be interesting to see if Yanzi Pierre or Keon Keeley can get onto the field this coming season. I think maybe a better way to phrase that is how much playing time are they going to get? Because I think those two are ready to play. Alabama had some freshmen come in that are truly dynamic, and Keon Keeley, Yanzi Pierre, certainly two of those guys. So I want to hear from you inside the comment box. Which freshman, besides Caleb Downs and Justice Haynes, do you think will play the most this coming season? Throw in a couple if you want inside the comment box.
Good afternoon, Coach. You have a few veterans at kicker and punter. What have you seen from them in the first week, and what do you want to continue to see from them through August?
Yeah, they've done really, really well. We've got a lot of confidence in both guys. James has gotten a little better each year in terms of his consistency. He's got a really strong leg, but he's gotten a little more consistent. So his bad kicks aren't as bad, and his good kicks are even better, but he's more consistent all the way around. And, Will's been as good a college kicker over the last 2 or 3 years as anybody could ever ask for. So we're really glad to have both those guys back. I think it's going to be an important part of, you got to have great special teams, and sometimes people just look at the specialist and they evaluate the special teams. So our specialists should be really, really good. So we got to build really, really good special teams around them so that that can be a real asset for us this season.
When you look to Will Reichert and what he's done at the University of Alabama, been here since 2019, he's played in a total of 46 games, which I think is among the most out of any players that are returning this coming season for 2023. He's had 75 attempts and he's made 62 of those. So his percentage is 82.6. He's had just one of those field goals, which was blocked, was in 2021. His longest is 52. He hit one as a sophomore in 2020, and then in 2022, hit another 52-yarder. So he's coming back, definitely one of the top returning field goal kickers in the entire landscape of college football. And then you also have Kool-Aid. That was one player that Coach Saban didn't mention when talking about the specialists. And I think sometimes we forget that Kool-Aid, JaQuincy McKinstry, is certainly one of the best punt returners in college football. Very dangerous. I think he was probably on the verge to, taking 5 to the house. I mean, last year his longest was 45 yards, and in total he had 21 attempts last year, returning punts for 333 yards, which was an average of 25.5 yards per punt return, which is truly amazing. So Kool-Aid is absolutely a special teams weapon. I think he was first team all SEC. So when you look to Alabama's specialists, Coach Saban said that those guys are going to be good, but you have to build the right specialists and the right special teams around those guys to have another quality unit. I think sometimes we get caught up in just the offense and the defense, but clearly special teams is as vital as the offense and the defense.
What have been your impressions so far of Kayden Proctor, and just where does that position stand with the health of Elijah and Miles McVay?
Well, they're in competition. I think both guys need to continue to develop and play with a little bit more consistency in terms of the very things that I've been talking about, in terms of paying attention to detail, doing the little things right, being able to stay focused when they get tired, having the mental toughness to see it through. And I really like the attitude and maturity of the offensive line and the leadership that we have at that position. So those guys are going to be pretty demanding on those guys to buy in and do things at the level they need to be able to play the way they're capable of. Nobody's disappointed in their development, but if they're going to be starters, there's an expectation that goes with that too, and I think that's something that we need to continue to work to get them to be able to do on a consistent basis.
So you have Elijah Pritchett, who is a redshirt freshman, 6'6", 312 pounds, out of Columbus, Georgia. People weren't necessarily pleased with his performance during A-Day, and they'd like to see freshmen by the name of Kayden Proctor get in at that left tackle position. Kayden Proctor, absolute monster, 6'7", 354 pounds, out of Des Moines, Iowa, and people want to see him play. And Coach Saban just said that he wants to see Proctor develop. And I think a couple practices ago when he was talking about some of the offensive linemen, said, look, it's hot. The feels like was like 120 that day. You got to be able to perform at the highest level when it does get hot, when it is in the fourth quarter. I think the reporter also asked about Miles McVay. Saban didn't elaborate on the 6'6", 350-pound prospect out of East St. Louis that I think has a nagging injury. Nothing too serious, but stay tuned for maybe an update that we'll find out more regarding Miles McVay. But you look at some of the guys that Eric Wolford brought in. I mean, Miles McVay is an absolute monster. So is Kayden Proctor. And then you have Wilcom Formby, who is right there as well. Another gigantic freshman at 6'7", 320 pounds. We continue with Coach Saban.
Coach, at the top, you talked about the importance of communication. How does Seth McLaughlin been looking at center in terms of the checks and calls and the things that the leadership stuff that goes along with being a good center?
Oh, he does. He does really, really well. So does Dalcourt when he's playing center. But I think when you have veteran guys that, certainly can contribute to that guy, which, Book and JC, and those guys kind of set the tone for that whole group, with Seth. But he's done a really, really good job. He's gotten bigger, he's gotten stronger, and he's always had a tremendous attitude. I don't think anybody's ever going to go wrong hiring him. I don't care what he ends up doing. I mean, he's got the right stuff.
It's Coach Saban talking about Seth McLaughlin at center. Seth, run the damn ball, McLaughlin. 6'4", 301 pounds out of Buford, Georgia. Now a senior at the University of Alabama. And you look to the offensive line, and we're starting to kind of piece that offensive line together. Coach Saban just mentioned JC and Tyler Booker. So you have JC at the right tackle position. You have your right guard as Tyler Booker. You have Seth probably as a starter at the center position. And then you have Darrian Dalcourt also taking reps at that center position. And then you have Terrance Ferguson at left guard. And then that left tackle spot, I think, is still up for grabs between Pritchett and Kayden Proctor. But when you look to a player like Seth McLaughlin, I mean, Coach Saban just said he has the right stuff. And when he says something like that about somebody, he respects you. And you want to have a center that is nasty. You want to have a center who wants to run the football, who wants to live in the trenches, who just recently when we were listening to Tyler Booker was explaining why he likes Seth McLaughlin. He said, look, when I first talked to Seth, he said, do you want to sit back and allow these 240-pound guys to come at us when we're protecting the quarterback, or do you want to impose our will on these 240-pound prospects? Like, that is the mindset that we're looking for. So Seth McLaughlin, a welcome back addition to this offensive line. I mean, when you look to how he played, I believe in the SEC championship game against Georgia, I mean, it was phenomenal. I mean, we didn't really hear too much about him, but he came in and held his own against some of the most incredible defensive linemen that we've seen from Georgia, right? And he held his own, and he did a very good job. So really excited to see him step up to this role, be a leader for this offense going into the 2023 season.
Do the skill sets of your options behind center make a two-quarterback system possible, and is that something you'd even consider moving forward?
I haven't even thought about it, to be honest with you, and I don't see how those things are related. So I don't know if – we've had two quarterbacks around here before, but that doesn't mean we had to change the center. Or that one guy went with one center and the other guy went with another center.
Just the options you have at quarterback, does that create an do you have, do the skill sets match, or would they be beneficial for a two-quarterback system? Nothing to do with the center.
Every center that we have can snap to every quarterback that we have. That's
not what I'm asking. I'm asking the options you have at quarterback, their skill sets, does that lend to a two-quarterback system? Would that be possible, and would that be something you can?
We're trying to develop all of our quarterbacks right now, so that's not something that we've talked about to this point. If we think it's going to help us win down the road, then we'll certainly consider it.
Holy cow. That was kind of a tense moment towards the end of the press conference when Tony Tsoukalis and Saban are trying to find a language to, communicate on, right? And I think what Tony is asking is, would there be some sort of scenario if there was a two-quarterback system? And Saban, I was confused, or who knows what was going on there, but he was like, clearly not. I don't think there's going to be a two-quarterback system, but, like Saban said, like, if it was beneficial for the program, then they would certainly look at it. Hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe. I appreciate you guys being here. We're going to move to our player interviews. We had Chris Braswell speak today to the media, along with Arnold and Jermaine Burton. Lead off with Jermaine Burton for the player interviews, which were conducted on Thursday August 10th. Now, Jermaine Burton is entering his second season at Alabama. He's 6 foot, 194 pounds, out of California. He's now a senior. Last season for the Crimson Tide, he played in 10 games. He had 33 receptions and 540 yards, leading all the wide receivers, including 6 touchdowns. Here is Jermaine Burton actually being asked about dropped passes to lead off the interview.
So obviously, when you play receiver, drops are going to happen. But as a group, what things are you guys doing to work on making sure those are minimized as much as possible this season?
That is definitely a good point. And so, we really take initiative into our own hands and staying after practice, doing whatever it takes, getting on the jug machines, doing drills with the weighted like 2-pound ball, a lot of stuff like that. But mainly just, repetition of it, just catching. Because you're not going to get all the catches you need in practice. So, it's up to you to stay after practice and make sure you get the good amount of catches you need.
Now, let's face it, a lot of people seem to have different points of views about Jermaine Burton. Jermaine Burton was asked if he's being slept on or if people are overlooking him during this early part of the 2023 season.
You led all the receivers in yards last year, but you haven't really gotten the hype this offseason. Do you kind of feel like you're being slept on heading into your second season with the team?
Considering all outside noise and whatnot, it's natural. People are going to talk the outside news media, but at the end of the day, we still have one goal, and that's to win. So, it doesn't matter. I'm not really focused on, how many yards I have or any touches or touchdowns or anything like that. Pretty much if I can do the most minimum, but at the end of the day get a national championship with this team, I'll do it. So, it's all about just pretty much how much we can contribute, and we have a lot of people that can contribute this year, so look forward to it.
We also had an opportunity to speak to Chris Braswell, opposite of Dallas Turner in terms of outside linebacker that should see significant playing time, be a starter for the Alabama Crimson Tide. He talked about the depth at that outside linebacker position. I know a lot of people have been asking about the outside linebackers, multiple players. There's clearly a wealth of depth at the position. Here's what Chris Braswell had to say when asked about the depth earlier today.
Who are some of the guys behind you that you could see sort of sliding into that role you played last season?
We have a lot of guys. We're very depth at our position. Everyone's working hard. Everyone's trying to focus on the little things and get better. Kind
of short and sweet from Chris Braswell when talking about the defense. Alabama was plagued with penalties on both sides of the ball during the 2022 season. Chris Braswell was asked about those penalties and having that mental focus, retain that mental focus. Here's Braswell talking about the penalties from last season and what they're doing this year to work on that.
I think Malachi talked about the up-down penalties for defensive people.
Yeah.
And Nick Saban talked a little bit about some of the discipline errors. Just how many up-downs have you done, and has that been something you guys have kind of keeping track of?
Yeah, so I did a couple up downs. I didn't do a lot, but yeah. So as a defense, if you jump off sides or you're in the neutral zone, we just got to get some up downs in. Just trying to show that discipline factor. We had a lot of penalties last year, so we're trying to clean that up on the defensive side. So we just want to remain disciplined as a team and especially as a defense.
I was reading through the comments on YouTube, as I always do, and I appreciate your guys' support. Someone pointed out they were an Auburn Tiger fan on our YouTube channel. And in the comment box, they said, Kevin Steele is the best defensive coordinator that we had. And that means that Alabama is going to win 2 more, if not 3 more national titles. And he pointed out the fact that Kevin Steele is the only defensive coordinator to beat Alabama and Georgia in the same season. Chris Braswell was asked about new defensive coordinator Kevin Steele on Thursday.
Kind of bouncing off that, when we talked to Coach Steele, obviously he was here on Saban's first staff, and he talked about discipline, old school. Kind of what's it been like working with him, and kind of how have you seen that mentality from him?
Oh, it's been great. He's been honest, about, like I said, being disciplined, focusing on your keys, doing the little things right, finishing at the line. If the ball's on the ground, pick the ball up, scoop and score, focusing on getting the ball out, turnovers, everything. All of the little things that matter is what he focuses on.
We also had an opportunity to hear from Alabama defensive back TERRION Arnold, who should be a starter this coming season. He was asked about transfer in Trey Amos on Thursday, and here's what TERRION Arnold had to say about his fellow corner.
They brought in Trey Amos this offseason. Just what's that competition been like, and what have you learned from him being, a senior coming in from Louisiana?
The
I would say he's brought a lot of fire to the group, and he's made us a better group, better secondary. He brings a grit, toughness to the game, and he's kind of like the rest of us in the group. He's a perfectionist, so I would say we all gel well together, and we make each other better.
Now, Arnold was also asked about Caleb Downs. This is a great soundbite talking about what he's seen from Caleb Downs thus far.
What's the most impressive thing you've seen Caleb Downs do since he got here?
Practice about day 3. We were in cover 2. They threw a 50-50 ball, made a crazy play, made a great play. The guy's a playmaker.
Now, a lot of people have been asking about Earl Little, and rightfully so. He's playing star behind Malachi Moore right now in the early season. Here's what Arnold had to say about Earl Little.
What kind of progress have you seen from a guy like Earl Little who can do kind of what you're doing, play corner and star?
Like I said in one of my previous interviews, Earl is a playmaker, great teammate, great guy, and I've seen a lot of different things. I would say number one thing I've seen out of Earl is maturity. He doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low, and he just continues to come in here and work every day.
Now, I had an opportunity to ask Terrance Arnold about the wide receivers. I mean, I've been talking about Isaiah Bond, and I've been talking about Malik Benson, so I asked Terrance Arnold on Thursday, what does he think about their playing style? This is what he had to say.
Hey, Terrance, thanks for being here. Specifically going up against 2 receivers, the challenges of going against Malik Benson and Isaiah Bond.
Speed kills. All I would say is speed kills. It's just speed, speed, speed. With those guys, they make us better, and they really, really push us.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Bama Football on YouTube podcast. My name is Kyle Henderson. I'll put the QR code at the bottom of this screen. I appreciate the tip outs. You can also hit the join button at the bottom of this video to become a fan funder. I appreciate all your support. Put a lot of work, really my heart and my soul into the YouTube channel. This is what I do for a full-time basis, so I really appreciate you guys. Hope you guys are enjoying the high-quality content. Hit the thumbs up, like, subscribe one more time. From beautiful Tuscaloosa, this is Kyle Henderson at Bama Football, and you're listening to the Bama Football podcast right here on YouTube.